This is the Business of Apps podcast, bringing you actionable insights from the leaders of the global app industry and the world's fastest growing apps. You can find more app news, data and analysis over at businessofapps.com.
Welcome to the Business of Apps podcast. On this show, we invite app industry professionals to cover various topics. We promise to do our best to keep it both insightful but brief. In this episode, we have Matthew Lord, CSO at PerformCB, and Lee Aho, EVP of Marketers at PerformCB. This episode is different. Recently, we hosted a webinar featuring PerformCB team talking about how to scale user acquisition in 2023. And we are releasing a recording of this conversation with Matthew and Lee. It was a lively discussion that covered a lot of ground, so without further ado, how to scale user acquisition in 2023 webinar.
Well, hello everyone. Hello again. Great to be back here on Business of Apps Live with another online event for you. Please say hi in the chat. I can see everyone's coming in here. Let us know where you are, maybe what the weather's like. With Holly's here, I think from Florida, if I got that right, from the team. We've got Alan, we've got Dolores, Amir is here. A lot of sign-ups for this. We're very excited. So yeah, please say hi. I'm going to do a bit of housekeeping right now, and then we'll get into the main discussion. So yeah, hopefully you can familiarize yourself with Crowdcast. Hello, David from Toronto. Amy from Florida. I'm not sure if she's a connection of PerformCB. So yeah, let us know in the chat where you're from, who you are. And we've got Boardville Brands in Grand Rapids, Michigan. Oh, great. Yeah, Amy is from the team. Spain, Clara. Hello, Clara. Dolores is based in New York, Albany. We've got Roberto from Bologna, Italy. Christian Ibanez. Sunny and hot Miami. I'm not sure what sort of space you're in, Christian. Is it maybe crypto, I imagine, or fintech or something glamorous down in Miami? Paulina is calling in from Warsaw. We have Dorset. It's a lovely place, Joe. Dorset, UK. We have a game developer, Danny Solopov in London. Alicante in Spain. Fort Lauderdale, Nikia. Well, hello, everyone. A bit of housekeeping. So hopefully some people have found the chat. If you haven't found the chat, please drop in and say hi in there. And we have the Q&A button, so you can leave some questions. We will hopefully have a bit of time for Q&A today for our two experts. Kiev, I can't pronounce your name, but maybe you can let me know the phonetic. Apologies for that, but welcome from Kiev. Great to have you here. Lima, Peru, very international. So yeah, you've got the Q&A box for questions. There's a little poll box. We've already had quite a few votes. That's great. That's the little graph thing. We'll be calling that out later, but maybe give that a look as well. And I think that's the main stuff. Let's see who else is here. Oh, Christian is in fintech in Miami, and it's an app, Trader Pal, offering Latinos the opportunity to invest in your stock market. That sounds very exciting. Hi from NYC. I know fintech's an area Lee and Matt know quite a bit about. Virgin Islands, great. Reno, okay, good. Well, I think we've got a quorum here. So I think we are just about ready to go. So welcome everyone. Don't forget that Q&A box. Drop any questions in there. We'll pick them up in a minute. So I'm going to move myself over here. Hang on a minute. I am both asking the questions today and doing the controls, so just bear with me. Here we go. Oh, I've moved us all there. There we go. And yeah, I think we're all set. All right, well, today's session's all about how to scale user acquisition in 2023. Hi, Segun in Nigeria. I don't know if that's Lagos, maybe you're in. So yeah, how to scale user acquisition in 2023. We're going to be creating a plan of action to grow user acquisition, and we're thinking about long-term retention as a sort of outcome we want. So let's get into it. The first thing to do is introduce myself. My name's James. I'll be your host for the day, and I'm part of the team at Business of Apps and the App Promotion Summit. We're heading to New York very shortly, so if anyone's there in June, we'd love to see you. But without further ado, let's introduce our speakers. I think we're going to start with Matt. Here he is. Please welcome him to the virtual stage. Hi, Matt.
Hello, James. Thank you so much. And thank you to Business of Apps. Thank you, everybody, for joining from really sounds like all over the world. Really excited to be here. My name is Matthew Lord. I'm Chief Strategy Officer for Perform CB. I'm about to celebrate my 17th year with the company at the end of this month, which is really exciting. And I just want to say, I really love the mobile space. There are just so many smart data-driven marketers in this space. And with that, I'll pass it over to my colleague and friend, Lee.
Thank you, Matt. And James, thanks again for having us. Really cool to see where all the listeners are chiming in from. I'm Lee Aho. I'm the EVP of Marketers with Perform CB. I've been with the company since 2008, so a couple years behind Matt, but we'll be celebrating 15 years in July. I'm responsible for new business and strategic account growth, where we really help brands and marketers acquire customers using an outcome-based model. And I am based in Sarasota, Florida.
Great. Okay. Well, there's a lot of experience to draw on in this discussion. So just to frame what we're going to be covering today, I think it's certainly true that economic and privacy uncertainties continue to have both users and marketers across the world, which we've seen today, questioning their spending habits. There's more than 100K apps launching each month. Acquiring users is getting more expensive, it's more competitive than ever. And last year, apps worldwide, this is according to AppsFlyer, I was stunned at the statistic, collectively spent 80 billion on UA. Acquiring new users and customers is becoming more expensive, and it's even harder for those who are learning to work in our current constrained times with restricted ad budgets and data restrictions. And you've also got consumers who are cutting back on spending themselves. So it's a perfect storm for the world of UA. So the question is, what can we do to continue driving quality user acquisition at scale amidst all these roadblocks? So as I said, what we're going to do is create a plan of action. Matthew and Lee have got the insights, the strategies and resources to help you with this today, based on a lot of experience. I think I haven't added it up in my head quite yet, but I think it must be well into 20 or 30 years collective experience with performance marketing. And so in this webinar, we're going to create a plan of action to help you scale your UA. We're going to be looking at how to do competitive optimization for your ad spend, how to maximize your reach through different traffic channels, and how to plan for Q4, which is coming up very fast. It's already May, soon it's going to be June. When we started planning this webinar, I was shocked at the idea of thinking ahead to September to December, the holiday season, but I now see why everyone was so keen to cover it. So here we go. Before we move on, there's a little poll here, which I just called out. So if you click on the right and lean forward, you will find the poll, and it's asking you, what has been your biggest challenge with UA campaigns in the last 6 months? Is it lack of ad budget? Is it you're unsure of what channels would be best to tap into? Is it the whole privacy iOS 14 SK ad network issue? Or is it another one? And if it's another, please feel free to drop that in the chat. So let's have some answers to the poll. We get a sense of what people are finding the most challenging. So looking here, people are unsure on channels. Budget is an issue for a reasonably big minority. Privacy is an issue as well. We've not had any others yet. So let's see. Seems like channels is the main one for now. Yeah. Okay. So let's see. Well, we'll be covering all these things in the discussion. Okay. So on to our first section, which is all about uncovering optimization opportunities. So the question is, what are the most impactful optimization opportunities in the current app ecosystem while staying within budget constraints? And I believe, Lee, you're going to be answering that one.
Yeah, I'll start with that. I'm looking at the poll results right now, and it looks like about 17% of people said that lack of ad budget is one of their biggest challenges right now. So let's start with the latter half of that question, really concerning budget constraints. I think marketers and brands are in a position where they've got to self-reflect and ask, is constraining or restricting a UA budget the correct approach? And what impact does that have on long-term objectives? Because to us, like, this ecosystem just highlights opportunity, and it further demonstrates the positive potential of an outcome-based program. So for those listeners less familiar, an outcome-based model just means that brands are only paying when a specific action or outcome occurs. So in the mobile space, one of the most common outcomes would be a mobile app install. Now, while that's the front end action, you're still optimizing against down funnel metrics and engagement metrics, but at the end of the day, you're paying for results. So usually those results and the measurability of those results support increased user acquisition. So I would start by asking, is restraining or constricting budgets the correct approach for our business? And are we leveraging an outcome-based approach? Additionally, if you're finding that your competitors are pulling back budget, huge opportunity. You can strengthen your brand signal, not only to your customers, but to your competitors' customers as well. So increased investment can help drive net new and converting your competitors' customers. And ultimately, that leads to more market share. Now, the first part of the question talks more about optimization and strategy. So, for starters at a high level, I think you've got to choose partners who have a proven track record and some social learnings that can be applied to strategies in whatever your space is or the channels that you want to scale in. And then the second high level pieces I'd call out is really understanding what's important to you and tracking those things, and then sharing those pieces of data with your traffic partners so that you're optimizing together, really building a partnership that's creating ROI positive results. And I'll kick it over to Matt for more on the optimization and strategy component.
Love it. Love everything Lee said, and I think I'm going to just really reinforce a lot of what he said. To start though with, I think James really framed it well, right? Like, there's uncertainty in the ecosystem, and that's both economic and with privacy changes. And our CEO has been saying something recently, which is, a good economy is really good for advertising budget. Even a true bad economy or recessionary economy is good for budgets overall. But uncertainty is very difficult for marketers to deal with. And so that's what I think a lot of folks are dealing with now, just not being certain what's next. And so what can you do as a marketer? And what I would say is, with everything you have to create your own certainty. And what do I mean by that? One piece of that is finding places where you can buy outcome-based marketing. So you can buy things that are really going to deliver for your program and not spend money on impressions, clicks, something else that may not back out. But the other real piece of that is really making sure your consumer and that consumer journey across every channel you're running in really, really well. So what does that look like? That looks like, hey, knowing for every install you get, you're going to get this many registrations as a baseline. As a baseline, those registrations are going to turn into free trials, first-time deposits, connected accounts, engaged users getting to a certain level in your game, right? Whatever those metrics are that are so crucial to you, you need to know that. And you need to have that really three-dimensional view of your consumer so that you can test different channels and know immediately their value. And that's really critical here. That gives you certainty to go out, buy in the marketplace, and know you're delivering returns for your brand. And I think what Lee said really is one of the most critical points, right? If you know all that, great, you're ahead of the game. But if you're not working with partners who can ingest that data and in real time and optimize via it, your partners are all going to be reactive, and you don't want partners optimizing based on consumers who may not be your ideal consumer, right? If you're just passing them the install and the registration, but not later events, that's just a very small view of the true lifetime value you're after.
Got it. So you're saying collectively, don't pull back your budget completely. You've got to still spend. Focus on performance-based spending with these backing out to these key kind of outcomes. Make sure you've got data in place and you can share that across with partners, and have a good consumer journey mapped so you know your baseline. You would have thought that would be kind of table stakes these days for a lot of marketers, particularly in our space. But do you find that very rarely people have got all of those in place, or it sort of evolves over time?
Yeah, I mean, I do think they're table stakes. That's exactly why we emphasize them so much. I think there are lots of really smart marketers, but I think they over-index on a specific KPI rather than looking at that whole journey. And I do think lots of people kind of miss it. I think the biggest thing people miss, and maybe one of the weaknesses of like a lot of programmatic buys, is that they're not sharing that data back and forth, right? So if you're on a programmatic buy and you're doing like a maximize traffic to a certain CPI, that's what the programmatic media is going to do, right? It's just going to give you as many installs as it can at that rate versus giving you the ideal customers you're really after.
Right. And have some of the privacy changes, the iOS 14, etc., affected the ability to track to those sort of outcomes? And sort of how can you get around that?
Yeah, I mean, I think early on, certainly there was a great deal of concern that limitations with iOS and SKAd network were going to be really troublesome. But each iterative version of SKAd network that has come out gets more and more granular in terms of both how you're able to track by source, as well as how much information you're able to pass in terms of events, etc. But what we need to remember about SKAd network is it doesn't restrict your ability to be outcome based and really to pay for those meaningful events. SKAd network protects user privacy, but it's still deterministic tracking, right? So it works very well with outcome based marketing.
Got it. Okay, well, we might get a bit more into that later. And don't forget, if you've got any questions, there's a little question box. Feel free to drop them in there. We'll try and take them on a bit later. Okay, well, moving on. Second question is, how do you foresee marketers overcoming these privacy challenges in 2023? And what strategies are you seeing marketers employ in user acquisition campaigns? We've sort of touched on this a little bit already. I think, Matt, you're going to take this one.
Yeah, sure. I'll just continue on a little bit. Like the privacy challenges are real, right? And I think every marketer in this space has felt it. It's everything from governmental regulations, and in the U.S., right, it's happening state by state, and so it's tough to keep up with. But it's also certainly led with big tech and Apple, Google recently at their most recent I/O event, right, are giving new details about their privacy sandbox. So while Apple's led, Google's coming with additional changes, and I think that's what we all have to brace ourselves for, is that there's no status quo. It's going to continue to change and evolve, and we need to be ready. I think all these movements in the industry are actually a really positive thing. I think they're the result of people abusing people's data, right? Like now, I think the abuse of data is really unfortunate most of all because it impacts things that were so valuable to marketers in terms of the data they could get, targeting they could get, but even beneficial to consumers. But that's where we are, and we have to live with it. For mobile specifically, certainly the biggest impacts have been in iOS, but again, they're coming to Android, so we need to be ready for that. And really, our strategy with our clients has been relatively straightforward. One, as a company, we made sure we were ready for SK Ad Network, even when so much was unknown about it as it was getting released. If you remember those early days, like no one knew exactly how it was supposed to work. We were all kind of playing a guessing game. But we were ready. We got our clients ready. And what we really try to do is say, hey, we need to have a good diversified media mix that includes privacy safe inventory, so that, hey, the next big change or bump in the road, you've got bases covered. You can continue to acquire even if one thing becomes less effective, like Facebook got less effective at a certain point, right? And so that mix is just such an important part, including making sure you have a certain percentage of your traffic coming from scan traffic. The MMPs have also done a good job of providing solutions in this new environment and really helping mobile marketers bridge the gap. And so I would say the ecosystem's stabilized a little bit in terms of privacy, but we know further changes are coming, and we just have to be ready.
That's quite interesting. You said the MMPs have done a good job, and a lot of people said they were going to be toast with it in this new world. But it's great that they, at least according to you, are finding a good path in the new environment and making themselves useful.
And James, I think privacy is such an interesting topic overall right now. And we know your audience is largely an app-first focused audience. But when we back up to our outcome-based model, we run a lot of web traffic as well, where common outcomes would be more of like a cost per lead or cost per sale or cost per call. And what we've really seen is increased adoption and a lot of success with app-first focused marketers starting to build effective web-based strategies. And there's a lot of reasons for doing that. It could be a really good user experience through web. It could help increase the addressable market in terms of where they can go for new prospects. It can help sidestep potentially some of the App Store fees. But privacy is a very real component of why you should consider that as part of your strategy as well. And when we look within the Perform CB client base, we kind of see it going both ways. For example, like antivirus and shopping extension and personal finance marketers who maybe came to us with strength on web have started to expand their app approach. And the opposite is true too. And that's probably more applicable to this audience, but streaming services, photo editing solutions, sports betting apps are now running really competitive web-based acquisition programs. And in part, it does provide more flexibility because those web-based platforms are not subjected to the same restrictions that are imposed at the App Store level. So it's maybe a secondary thought for app marketers in terms of leveraging web to help with some of the privacy headwinds or challenges. But we see a lot of marketers successfully execute it. And I would strongly consider it for any company, whether their kind of initial preference for acquisition is web or app.
Right. And do they need a web-based product to do that, or they can be effective using a web-based acquisition to drive primarily to an app-based service?
Yeah, both are possibilities. Certainly in the sports, gaming, gambling site, they tend to have strong experiences on both, and that was one example I gave. But in the photo editing solutions, for example, they tend to be more app-focused in terms of where they want those consumers living, but they're still able to drive UA through the web and ultimately get those consumers into the app. So it provides the same end result, but a different experience and the potential to, like we said before, hit a larger addressable audience that tends to live more in that web-based environment.
Got it. Okay, so we're one way around privacy, have a mix of sources. So you're not relying just on something like Facebook, which obviously took a huge hit when all these changes emerged. Now seems to be sort of crawling out of it a bit, but to have a mix, include some scan-based inventory and channels in your mix, and use MMPs to help you navigate that. And maybe think about some other channels like web, where you can at this point still get the tracking. Great. Okay, so let's move on to our next question. Here we go. Okay, we're talking about reach now. We're going to move on to talk a bit about reach. So yeah, there's a lot of saturation in the app stores. We've got to look at some alternative ways to reach new users. We've got to have a bit more testing and research to identify some of these growth channels. And at this point, we're going to get you all to lean forward again and answer our second poll. Let's see if we can bring that up. Tala, thank you. Yeah, we've got that up now. Poll is visible. There we go. Okay, so let's take a look at this poll. Let us know what you think. Of the following, which channel are you most interested in testing to expand your app's advertising presence in 2023? If you're here from a non-app company, I would just say in general, are you looking at OTT and CTV, contextual display, app store optimization, influencer, or another one? And feel free to let us know specifically which one. So quite a lot of interest in OTT and CTV, the TV channel. There's a couple of votes for ASO. So let's see. So yeah, a lot of interest. No one's really going for display right now or influencer. I'm quite surprised at that. Maybe we need a few more votes to come in. So yeah, which of the following are you most interested in testing? Is it OTT and CTV, contextual display, ASO, influencer, or another one? Okay, I'm still waiting for one in contextual display. Seems like there's definitely a quorum for, okay, here we go, contextual display. Someone's put their hand up. Oh, influencer. Okay, so we're getting a few in here. Let's see. Yes, this talk will be recorded, Ignacio. Okay, so here we go. And we're getting a few little questions in, so we'll cover them in a minute. So let's have a look. Okay, so yeah, CTV is of interest, contextual display, ASO, influencer. So yes, interest across there, but particularly in TV, which is interesting. So what about Perform CB? What channels has your team been utilizing for scaling UA? Has it been, your established channels in a different way, or have you been looking at some of these emerging channels we've just been looking at? And over to you, Lee.
Yeah, certainly a combination of those two approaches. So leveraging emerging channels and also identifying new ways to tap into existing channels. So I think on a high level, we like supported spends and continued investment where the return is strong. So that should really be your North Star. Identify where you're seeing the best results in return. And that's where you want to prioritize your UA efforts. But we've helped a lot of marketers and brands tap into new emerging channels to build some diversity and also open the addressable market. So those channels include, several of the ones that you've got here, James, as well as things like native, reward, SMS potentially. You've got influencer display on here. So in total, we operate in about 30 different collective channels and really try to identify for each specific brand or marketer, where are they most likely to find the best audience for them? And then how do we construct strategy to go acquire that? Additionally, to the second part of the question, we see, first part of the question rather, we see marketers and brands using existing channels differently. One that comes to mind would be content utilization. So when we think about sites like advertorials, ranking sites, listicles, those have been commonplace for web acquisition for a number of years. But there has certainly been an increasing trend in apps starting to take over some of those placements. So the original point of entry may be an existing channel, but the user experience is very different. And we try to help learn through these social learnings that we've got and apply some of those strategies to brands that may be limited right now in regards to where they're going to identify the best prospective customers for their business. So without question, I would say the answer is both, and would recommend that marketers employ both. It really comes down to identifying their product, their service, and where we believe they're most likely to find the high value users for their business.
Right. And are there any particular verticals where that, particularly this idea for the native ad units, that work well?
Yeah, native performs across a wide range of verticals. You know, we do a lot in streaming, we do a lot in shopping. I mentioned some of the others as well, like from a gaming perspective. So native is one that I think there's potential to leverage strategy for every type of app, and when we see that successfully working.
Right. Okay. And Matt, anything to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, to speak to native a little bit, I would say like native, just like video or other kinds of channels, right? Just increases people's ability to merchandise their app and what it does, give people additional content. So just things that, you know, maybe don't fit on a small little banner ad or where maybe your brand isn't the strongest yet. There's great opportunity there. You know, of course, I agree with everything Lee said. I mean, we're big believers that every channel actually has value. And the key is making sure you're right pricing that channel for how it's performing specific to your app and your customer acquisition. And that you're also, you know, approaching it in a really strategic fashion. So, you know, is your offering really aligned with that channel? You know, in terms of nascent channels, CTV clearly got a lot of interest from the audience. I'm not surprised. It's a huge buzzword, probably going to be one of the fastest growing channels again this year. And you know, we're definitely excited about it too. But one real trend to note is that even these nascent channels are available on an outcome basis. So you can buy these on a CPI basis. You can buy influencer traffic on a CPI basis. And so maybe, you know, the lack of a vote for influencer early on was partially due to this idea like, oh, well, I have to spend, you know, money just to get the post versus truly buying that kind of traffic in a way that's going to back out for you as an app developer. You know, we're huge believers that all media eventually should become truly outcome based. And so we think that the fact that all channels are embracing this, we operate across like 26 different channels, is just a huge step forward for that for marketers. In terms of, you know, one that category I was hoping would get a little more votes was contextual display. To take it back to privacy a little bit, as we think about all the privacy changes we're talking about, that means, hey, all this third-party data we used to have and used to be able to leverage so efficiently is gone. And I think another trend channel-wise is we're going back to these really contextual placements. So what kind of apps, what kind of, if it's CTV, what kind of streaming apps, what kind of websites, what kind of content is going to have a real affinity for your ideal audience, so that you can place your ads there and make sure you're getting who you're looking for. Super important there. So, you know, Lee's 100% right. Invest in the channels where you're going to create some of that certainty I spoke to earlier, as well as really allocating budgets, pricing, spend towards where you really see deep funnel performance in terms of that acquisition.
I'm amazed you came up with 30 channels, Lee. Matt says 26, so there may be a bit of disagreement there. And what would you count as a channel? Is that, you know, is Snap a channel, or is it just part of social, or you know, what do you class as a channel?
Yeah, that would be considered grouped into social.
Right.
I round it up, but this is always evolving. So I think the presence and channels has increased over time. But yeah, specifically right now, we would target 26 different channels. I think some of the leading ones we touched on in regards to native displays, social, contextual, video, email, SMS, rewarded. It really depends on the marketer and what's going to resonate with their ideal audience. But again, I think one of the key takeaways for everybody listening, and Matt touched on this, is that all of these are available now on an outcome basis. So whereas before, you may have been committing a certain dollar amount without knowing what that return was going to be, this is completely measurable, it's quantifiable. You're only paying when that desirable outcome or action occurs. And as that continues to expand, it's a huge opportunity for marketers to invest more in UA because they can confidently point to the return that's coming as a result of those intelligent spends.
Right. Well, I'm definitely going to have to find out from you the full list of those 26 at one point, and maybe we'll have a quiz at one of our events in the future and see who can name the most. You'll be banned from the quiz, by the way, but yeah, I think that's a good question. But yes, I think it's very relevant with, as you say, some of the mainstream channels are challenged, but there's maybe a whole world of media out there people haven't necessarily applied to app marketing and user acquisition. And as you say, if you do it on a performance basis and the right way, you can unlock all these new pools of inventory. I think it's very interesting. And just to follow up on the CTV, what is it about that platform that's so exciting at the moment? And why is it kind of, in your view, something to really watch?
I mean, I think as these platforms come out, right, they're all these new channels are incremental opportunities. So they're opportunities to grow your acquisition efforts even more. CTV is clearly exciting because it allows for video, 15, 30-second spots. And then I think too, the ability to track on a true performance basis, even though that ad's happening on your TV, and you're able to track somebody sitting on their couch with their device, there's something magical about that and a kind of new experience for marketers. So a lot of buzz around it, well earned, and it's an exciting channel. It's only going to expand as you see these streaming services continue to roll out new ad-supported tiers or ad advertising, right? So it'll be interesting to see how the channel continues to grow.
Got it. And Lynn in the chat, I think, is agreeing and saying, yeah, depending on the product you're pushing, they might use Discord, Reddit, Twitch, or YouTube for something like esports. We do have a question, which I may answer now or leave to the end, which is from Salah, and he said, following up to the earlier point, SK Ad Network is fine for source level attribution, but doesn't support any details beyond that, such as campaign or ad level attribution data. Do you have a solution here? And in his view, the MMPs overpromise and underdeliver.
Well, I'm friends with all the MMPs, so I can't say a bad word about them. I would say, there are definitely more restrictions with SCAN than we're traditionally used to. But I'm a big believer that each version is getting better and better, and that you also haven't seen Apple take a super firm stance of requiring its usage everywhere, right? Partially because they know it's not quite ready for prime time. And so my comment about the MMPs and doing a good job is, they're really bridging the gap between what SCAN maybe leaves on the table and doesn't do as well yet with the rest of the marketplace, where we're still able to track through things like advanced privacy and other kind of solutions like that are now widely available across every MMP.
Right. Okay. Hopefully that helps answer the question, Salah. Thanks for asking it. Okay. So let's move on to our next question. I think we've got only a couple more. So Let's see. So what about best practices for testing new targeting strategies and diversifying spend outside of the channels we discussed, such as Facebook, that are a bit more challenged at the moment, so you can scale user acquisition? And yeah, is this going to be Matt taking this one?
Yeah, sure. I touched on it a little earlier. It's certainly true that when ATT rolled out, Apple's ATT, that the impact on Facebook was maybe the most seismic event we sort of saw, and a very real one, where people found that programs where they were buying very effective CPIs on Facebook before suddenly got a lot less efficient almost overnight, right? I would say that Facebook's done a good job of recovering, of adjusting to the new reality of having more limited data, as well as, I think, again, all of you, all these smart marketers out there have found better ways to buy on Facebook and adjusted your media buying strategies on it, so that it's still an important channel, right? Like it's not that I would ever recommend walking away from Facebook, but there is a new normal, and I think there's a really good lesson here for everybody, right? That at that moment when Facebook took the biggest hit, a lot of people had a big dent, a big chunk out of their overall acquisition program, and were scrambling to find how to replace that, right? Against the goals they had for their app, for their company, for their brand. And it's really just why a healthy media mix is so important. Never to be over-reliant on one company, one platform for your media buying. So I would just say, like, hey, can you ramp up on your programmatic, your contextual? Again, I'm a big fan of contextual going forward. In-app video, CTV, all of it, to really make sure that you have that healthy mix. It's just insurance against the next set of changes that come to the ecosystem, whether it's privacy changes or something else, right? We know how fast the technology moves, as well as just the overall mobile ecosystem. It's constantly changing. Again, outcome-based marketing allows you to test into all these channels. I guess the other point is that it really allows you to test in these channels really, really efficiently. Why? Maybe you're not an expert in CTV, you're not an expert in social, and to James's point about channels, buying on Facebook is very different than buying on TikTok. Maybe there's a certain overlap in strategies, but there are also big differences, right? And so to do this all yourself, you have to invest operationally in hiring experts, trying to get the media buying going so that you can back out on that CPM pricing, that CPC pricing on a certain channel, to get it to back into your goals. Where outcome-based pricing really allows you to buy that same media without hiring for the expertise, to test it quickly, know exactly how it performs for your app, and the level of consumers it delivers. So it's not just changing the risk of the actual media buy. It's also about those capital investments companies no longer have to make because that pricing is available.
Okay, Lee, anything to add?
That was really thorough with that response, and I think he's spot on. General rule of thumb, brands need to be mindful to not over-index any specific source. Since Facebook was a call out in the question, in April we saw that bug within Facebook that caused many marketers to overspend. So either outcome was not great for them, either overspending, or as a remedy to that, they turn off the spend. That can have some longer term ramifications too. So that just supports an overall diversified media mix. I think the other thing that we will continue to see and evolve is where are users going. So using Facebook as the example, as TikTok and Snapchat have changed some of the market share aspects within social media, you want to ensure that you've got a strategy for where your customers are going to be living. And then in terms of best practices, this is repetitive with some of the stuff that we've said before, but we believe wholeheartedly in it, in the sense that you've got to know what you need to track to really measure the success of a program, communicate that with the traffic partners that are helping you build in these testing strategies, and then really try to understand from your partnerships, what have they done in that space, or how would they approach strategy for this test that you're looking to roll out, and ensure that you kind of understand how that's going to positively impact your user acquisition. But I think Matt really covered it extremely well.
TikTok's a great example. I mean, what state just outlawed TikTok, right? Or banned TikTok? It's like Wyoming, Montana, something, right? Like, we'll see if that holds up. But if you had a lot invested in TikTok from a marketing channel, what does that mean for you, right?
Pretty sure India banned it at one stage. I don't know if that continues, but yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
It'll increase VPN usage by a lot.
That's right. Yeah. Okay, so now a final section. We're looking at Q4. So yeah, a lot of apps, a lot of business in general is obviously done in this sort of key season between sort of October, November, December, and you've got to get ready for that if you're going to maximize your results. So I think this is a really good point about running test campaigns now in the run up, so you're good to go in that crucial period, and it really pays to sort of plan ahead. Thinking about doing some sort of campaign, some prep work. So that's what we're going to cover now. I think it's a really good point. So on that note, how can marketers prepare to drive UA growth in Q4? And what are you going to be doing to optimize your campaigns for success?
Awesome. I can lead us off here. I think, James, you've kind of started the answer a little bit already in your intro. And I think you're 100% right. It is about preparing now for your season, your peak season. I mean, I guess when we say Q4, I would just say to all the developers out there too, like, we definitely recognize that everybody's peak season isn't the same, right? For some, it may be Q4. We have app marketers who, their peak season may be more around New Year, New You, kind of health and wellness. Or a streaming service, we have sometimes really big peaks in terms of what they want to do around acquisition, around a new show launching, a new movie, right? Something that is a really big event for them. And of course, that can lead to multiple peaks throughout the year, depending on your app. And the other thing to say there is, like, a lot of times we see huge wins for apps, not in things that are predictable from a terms of seasonality, but maybe it's some kind of marketplace event or a news cycle that just aligns perfectly with what your app does, and you need to be ready to take that for a ride. So it is all about preparation. So, like, if we think about just everything we've talked about, right? Like, we've talked about, hey, embracing outcome models, knowing your customer metrics, integrating those signals about your most valuable consumers with your partners to make sure that they can respond in real time to where you're getting the most value out of the media, diversifying your channel mix, and then right pricing, optimizing that channel mix, optimizing that spend to really maximize your returns. It's a lot to do, and if you're trying to do that in peak season, you're too late, right? So it's all about a continuous process of getting prepared, knowing your metrics, layering on, and really making sure you're ready for your opportunity to really scale your app. I guess the final point I would make, and then I'll hand it over to Lee, is like, in this time of economic uncertainty or recession, you need to keep your apps in the market, that's the only way you can prepare for the rebound, right? The other side of a recession is always going to be some kind of rebound. And we see over and over again that the marketers who lay the foundation during that down period are the ones who most benefit by the rebound, often by a really significant multiple, and really beat out the competition. So I would leave you with that and hand it over to Lee.
That's a great point. We've seen a lot of economic changes since we've been in the space, but when we date kind of what our tenure is, Matt and I were both here through 2008, 2009, and really saw what he just talked to, where brands who continued to invest in UA and really build the strength through those tougher economic times were the most successful coming out of it. The other thing I'd point to, and Matt touched on this, certainly is when you think about your peak season, you almost have to approach that like it's a single game elimination. You can't show up at peak season and expect to suddenly perform. And I think what's helpful lots of times for brands is to understand how the dots are connected with media buyers, because they're doing the same thing. They're continually testing campaigns to identify what the strongest campaigns are to be running when peak season becomes available. They want to allocate more spend, more resources invested into those programs. So it really benefits the brand or the marketer to make sure they're dialed in well in advance, and they almost secure themselves a spot in the media buyer's placements as you roll into peak season. Conversely, if you've been an underperforming campaign to that point, the likelihood of getting retested when you want the traffic the most, unfortunately, goes down. So I don't think this is going to be earth-shattering in a sense to brands or marketers, but it really is about the prep and the run-up to peak season to make sure that you're best positioned to capture that traffic. My takeaway again would be utilizing an outcome-based model where you're truly paying for results. We believe it's the best way to test into new channels and scale your program overall. And then beyond that, once you've acquired those customers, James, this might be a separate podcast or webinar, but really building in that customer-centric experience once you've acquired them, right? Like, are you truly talking to the customer's needs? Are you building personalized experiences? Are you a service leader to not only acquire customers, but to truly retain them and help grow your business overall?
Got it. Okay. Well, I think that's a very good point on planning ahead, getting ready for this key season, and as you say, not scrambling right at the end. We're quite unbelievably quite close to the top of the hour. So there was a question from Christian, which maybe you can answer here. He was asking, what about who can do this amazing outcome-based marketing? So maybe we'll just sort of maybe wrap up now. If there are any more questions, we might have a little bit of time at the end, so please leave them now or forever hold your peace. But maybe we can just sort of, give us a bit more about sort of, what you're up to at Perform.
Yeah, we encourage everybody to stay in touch post the wrap up of this one. So we've included our contact info and socials below. I know that we're coming up on time for questions, but we want to hear those questions and make sure that anybody who attended today gets the answers that they're looking for. We've also created something for everybody who's attending today. So we've got a deliverable. It's how three brands drive user acquisition at scale, detailed case studies, and really talks to the strategy across finance, entertainment, and e-commerce verticals. So we hope that will give some additional insights into strategies that we've employed and how marketers have successfully scaled UA. And you can find that link to download in the chat. And certainly, James, before we go, we want to thank everybody who did attend, especially you and Business of Apps, for hosting us and allowing us to have this discussion. We really enjoyed it.
Great. And that link, it's in the chat. It's also the big green button there. But yeah, there are some very good case studies in there of this sort of model. And great. Anything to add, Matt?
No, just really appreciate everybody who attended. Appreciate Business of Apps and you, James. And
we've got one question I would like to answer if we've got a minute, which I was also keen to hear. So what about ASO in your campaigns? You did mention ASO. Can you obviously, that's always of big interest. We have whole rooms at our events talking in, insane detail about this. How to use it in a more performance-based kind of world.
Yeah, I mean, ASO definitely is something that we attack for some of our clients. We think it's clearly a huge part of how you get your app to be discoverable within those app stores. And so, and I will say, even outside of what we do, because we don't really help folks with ASO in terms of the keywords you're using in your description, that kind of thing, right? But I have seen instances where somebody's changed one word in that description and seen really great results. There are other things that we can do to help, just in terms of really, the boosting your overall visibility within that app store, and we'd be more than happy to talk to anybody about that. So definitely reach out to us, and we can give you details.
Great. All right. Well, I think we've got your, near the top there now, we've got your emails there as well. It's matt@performcb.com and lee@performcb.com. We may well turn this into a podcast, so I'm reading it out there. Great. And well, thanks so much for joining us today. And look forward to maybe diving into some of those topics in more detail in future.
And that was Matthew Lord, CSO at PerformCB, and Lee Aho, EVP of Marketers PerformCB, and James Cooper, the host for the webinar from Business of Apps. To listen to more episodes, subscribe to our podcast on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Podcasts. Just search for Business of Apps, and you will find us easily. Remember, we release episodes on Mondays. So subscribe, and you'll be able to get new episodes on your smartphone, tablet, or computer as soon as we release them. And please don't forget to leave us a review or comment on iTunes. It is highly appreciated. And all episodes will also be available on businessofapps.com. Thank you for listening. See you next week.
Thank you for listening to the Business of Apps podcast. For more, head on over to businessofapps.com.